Hello everyone, and welcome to this event of International Working Women of Finland. Our organization is a community of 6,000 like-minded women living in Finland and working towards a more inclusive Finnish society. We have been already doing 2 events for the topic of discrimination in workplace, but we will also talk about discrimination in the private life as well, day-to-day life. Our first event was with the Finnish Institute of Occupational Healthcare, and there we discovered about the discrimination laws and some statistics. Our second event was with international talents, and today this is the third and last event for this topic at this moment, and we are going to be talking with Finnish talents who are also unfortunately facing discrimination challenges. I will let them introduce themselves. My co-host is first of all Priyanka, and then our panelists are Susanna, Marjo, Yakup, Anni, and we have Iida joining us doing the Finnish Sign Language interpretation for this event today. So have a great event, everyone. And Priyanka, maybe I let you start.
Thank you, Caroline, and hello, welcome everyone from my side. My name is Priyanka Banerjee, and today I will be the host together with Caro for this event. And I am an entrepreneur myself and working with the diversity and inclusion field, so dealing with helping companies deal with discrimination and how to help leaders understand and be more inclusive is what I do on a daily basis. It's a really interesting discussion for me. So maybe I would now give the stage to our panelists to introduce themselves, and then we will go into the discussion. So let's start, maybe Susanna, if you would like to start.
Yeah, I'm Susanna Viljanmaa, and I'm one of the founders of Transfeminiinit Ry, which is also known as the Transfeminiinit organization. And today I'm still recovering from the flu, so my voice isn't that perfect, but I'm glad to be on the panel. Thanks.
Thank you, Susanna, and welcome. Maybe we can move on to Anni.
Hi, my name is Anni Täckman, and I'm a project manager in a nationwide project VERA, which is owned by Rusetti, the National Association for Women with Disabilities. And we are doing for girls and women with disabilities, empowering, creating community and peer support, and overall like empowering thing for women. And there was a question for why I want to do this, why this is important to me, because women with disabilities experience like a multiple discrimination in work life and in life in general. So I like to change that and give my part to the future people with disabilities to have a better life, if I say so. Yeah,
definitely. We hope so too.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anni, and welcome to the panel. Let's move on to Yakup then.
Hello, my name is Yakup Albekoglu. I'm artist, producer, event producer, musician, and I'm active in Querk Ry at the moment, which is a cultural space in Vallila. And I have to admit I was a little bit wary at first of whether it's my place to speak about discrimination in Finland, being so light-skinned as I am, but I do believe that this sort of perspective that comes from having light appearance and foreign names lets me sort of see both sides of it. So maybe I can bring that perspective.
Definitely. Thank you, Yakup, for joining us today and bringing in that unique perspective. And then our last but not the least, Marjo. Thank you.
Yes, hello. I actually just realized when listening to the others that I'm the only one here not representing any association. So I'm representing people over 50 years old. So, unfortunately, that is also a group of people who are not treated in a very fair way in a work market. I think that's more in the work-related issue. And I have a long experience in the business, and actually I have been kind of in the both sides of the fence. So I have been in HR as well and recruiting manager. And on the other hand, quite recently, I was myself looking for a new work, and it took quite an effort to get it. Now I'm happy in my new position, very, very happy. But it kind of awakened me that we have actually a huge issue, not only in my case with the women over 50, or let's not put the gender there, it's men and women over the 50 have problems to find a job. But I also kind of realized that we have so many other groups, like groups here, that are not getting a fair chance in the work market. And I got kind of angry about it. So I think that's why I want to change it in a positive way.
Thank you so much, Marjo. And definitely that is today, we are all here to bring in different perspectives. And in the last session, like Caro mentioned, we had international talents joining in here, which has been talked about quite a lot, but maybe today's panel can bring something which is not so openly talked about, like what you said, Marjo, like the experience of people over 50 years of age, or then women with disabilities, or non-binary people, or then also having a different names, even when you are perfectly like Finnish. So maybe we can start with some experiences, like how do you think that discrimination actually is visible in the workplaces for different people? Like, is it very direct, or in Finland, is it like in a different way? How does it comes out in terms of experiences? Any of you can just start, like if you want to share any experience from your workplace and your experiences.
Well, maybe I can start. It would be sort of appropriate because it has to do with like one of my earliest experiences with employment in Finland when I was still, I think I was 17 or so, and I was applying for a job in a logistics warehouse, basically sorting items by postal number. And they had advertisement, and me and my brother, we both called. We called the place, and they answered that the position's been taken, that they're not looking anymore to hire. And then we'd run into this before sometimes, this situation, and we started thinking about it. We looked at each other long, and then we called again, but with Finnish names. And then they asked us for a job interview in a few days. And once they see us, once they see our faces, and they see that we're obviously white and we speak fluent Finnish, then the treatment's very, very different. And this is sort of like one of the more direct experiences. It has sort of led to this balance between, like, where on paper, people treat me different than they treat me live. And it's very stark difference.
I think we had this discussion also with that, how international or like non-Finnish sounding name could have this kind of discrimination experiences, and it's visible that it happened with you as well. So what about others? Like, how do you see that in the workplace discrimination actually manifest in your experience? Like, I think, Marjo, you did mention a very like shortly that you were finding job and it was getting hard for you. Could you like tell a little bit more about how maybe people over 50 can face or are facing discrimination at the workplace in Finland?
Yeah, I think that's actually something which it's not coming out in the way Yakup was telling, because okay, of course, if you could do this kind of A/B testing, that you you first send your CV with your actual experience, which basically reveals how old you are, and then you would cut it half and do it again. So then you could probably test the same experience that Yakup was having. But of course, I have never really done that, and I doubt if anybody has really tried that. But I think that is quite typical, that it's never said out loud. It's not even allowed nowadays in a job ad, but there is some internal unspoken consensus in the companies that they are looking for certain kind of profiles which are very, very narrow with the age and some other characteristics. And I think that is exactly the interesting thing, that we do not actually have real research how serious this problem is. Just the job searchers over 50 realize that with a really good experience, having checked all the things that they are asking in the job ad, you don't get even to the interview. And of course, that makes you think that there must be something with the age. And we don't have any real facts either that how probable is it that people over 50 are the first ones to be laid off when they are restructuring in the company. So we have too little research, but we have just a lot of experiences from people in these ages. So I think it's somehow hidden, and still it's known problem.
Yeah. I think from the demographic perspective, so as I mentioned that we have been working with diversity and inclusion topics, and we have been doing different kinds of surveys. And it's a very common thing to see that the most common age groups in the companies these days is somewhere between 30 and 40, 45, which is like the most common working age group. So it could be, but of course your experiences, what you're telling could be one of the reasons why that is so. Yeah, but maybe we can talk about it a little bit more. But Susanna or Anni, if you want to add something, please feel free to.
Well, I'd like to say about the difficulties in the recruitment is that too often it's not easy to prove it, because they will always find another reason to put the blame on for not recruiting you. But for example, the nurses are quite often sought after, and I have friends who have been recruited as nurses, but only temporary, and when they're looking to recruit them again, they don't get hired, and still they have those positions open, even though they have qualifications and they have positive testimonials about the job. They don't get recruited.
Yeah, I can agree with Susanna for that it's so hard to point that out, that where the discrimination happen. People with disabilities, as I have a wheelchair, spinal cord injury, and I actually had one time I applied to a work, and the company took me to the interview. I didn't mention I have a wheelchair in my application, because I don't think, why should I mention that? And I got to an interview, and I was in a top 2, but they actually took to another person, and I noticed, and I knew him already, and I know that I am more skilled than him, but he didn't have a disability I had, and I noticed at the interview already that the employer had a little bit negative attitude towards disabilities, and also lack of knowledge, because people always thought if you have a disability, you are always sick and you can't do, and you are slow, and etc. It's so many things. So I could do something about it, but I was like, nah, it's not worth it. I don't want to work that kind of place where they do that. They value more able bodies than the people with disability with skills. Yeah.
definitely. How do you think like unconscious bias play an important role in here, plus the lack of knowledge that you said, that people don't understand what it means to be hiring people with disabilities, or is it more about the unconscious bias that we have about like people with disabilities? And especially, like, for example, you probably have a visible disability. There are people who might have like invisible, or like it's not very visual. How do you think, do they also face this kind of discrimination?
Yeah, I think it's like many kinds, and they probably don't notice first, but when you say that you have this disability and it doesn't show, they automatically start to think, okay, maybe there's something wrong. So I think it's in general lack of knowledge about persons with disabilities, their ability to work, because some of us do full-time jobs and 100 and 150%, of course, and it's like the general attitude towards people with disability. It's nowadays it's a little bit better. In last like 5 years, it's become a little bit better, but it's still out there. There is few surveys and few studies made from that, and they are promising, but there are also really depressing numbers showing up. So yeah.
And maybe like Susanna, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Is it like the same with from the LGBTQ plus community, that the companies have lack of knowledge, or like this kind of bias in hiring or in promotion, or any kind of these workplace issues?
Well, first of all, there's some lack of knowledge, but also they haven't prepared, for example, in the construction industry that's predominantly filled with men, and they might have not had prepared to have women at all working over there. And in cases like that, they haven't just assumed that they are okay. They have no problems at all, because they only have men over there working. And when someone transitions while they're working over there, they don't even try to fix that. But it's not always the recruiter's fault that there's a problem. For example, if someone transitions after graduating, they have a laws require the schools and other facilities to give new testimonials and degrees in their new name, but not always do they succeed in doing so. For example, I have been battling with my school for about 2 years to have my degree with the new name, and I have already given up. But fortunately, my new employer didn't care about it at all. They didn't want to even see my degrees.
Yeah, definitely. And like, Karo, you please add.
Yes, I was just going to say that it's, of course, I think, a moral issue that everyone should be treated fairly, first of all, but it's even more shocking when your fundamental legal rights are being like outrageously denied to you. So it's basically denying your identity, either because you have a disability or because you have transition or whatever is the reason that so if we can't even get the fundamental rights to be actually followed through by institution or by administration or by employers, then how can we even impact the moral side of things? So I'm glad also today we will be discussing about how to do better and what kind of solutions are out there, because this kind of situation is just completely unacceptable in a modern society like Finland. I mean, we're in 2021, and this should be a matter of making a simple email request, probably copying your ID card, and then getting your new degree. Certainly not a 2-year battle.
Yeah, that is true. And I think that's what you pointed out. It's a really interesting thought that how these things like the discrimination not only impact your work life, but also your personal life. And how you can probably battle with structural issues, accessibility issues, and a lot of different issues outside the workplace as well, which sometimes not might impact your work life experiences as well. So do any of you want to share any personal experiences outside the work life which might be like which might have impacted you? For example, Susanna, you mentioned the degree, and that's a structural issue that we have. And are there any other structural issues that you see outside the workplace that might have impacted you personally?
Well, I know firsthand that a lot of, especially trans women, have difficulties recruiting, and that's forcing too many of us into sex work, because it's kind of the easiest one you can get without a degree, and there's a demand for that. And there's a problem with the Finnish sex laws, and I know some people who have moved abroad because of that. And people also face homelessness after coming out, or something like that. And people lose families also because of coming out. There's several layers of problems connected to that.
True. And I'm thinking that how it would impact when there is intersectionality into it. So for example, if a transgender woman with a visible disability, do you see, Anni, like, are these intersectional layers impacting people more into experiencing like more discrimination?
Yeah. Just a plain answer. Yeah, there is a lot of like a multiple, is it a multiple discrimination? I think that's the word. Yeah, because you have a disability, you are a woman, but then your sexuality is different. So there is a lot of people think us persons with disabilities that we are non-sexual things, that we are just a group of like a disabilities, and we are not women, men, transgender, whatever, and they only see us like this group, something else, and they don't find us like individuals. So there is a lot of things, especially in oh, I lost the word. That's in the oh, I lost the word. I will check the word and I will come that. But if you are living in an institution or in the housing and you have a like a development disability, and then there is so hard to you express your sexuality, they don't understand, because the workers over there, the nurses, they don't recognize that you have a sexuality and stuff like that. So it's really hard in that section. Yeah. So maybe you get the point what I'm saying, but I really lost the word now.
No,
so sorry.
It makes sense that there is like issues with awareness, and when there are different intersectional things that you identify, it might become even more difficult. So, but what about maybe Yakup and Marjo? You can join in. What happens after you are in the workplace? Does the discrimination continues in terms of like promotion or like career advancement? How does that impact once you have been through the recruitment process?
Okay, Yakup, go ahead.
So maybe Yakup, you can start, and then Marjo can join.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of interesting. I think for me, the hardest part is recruitment, and this sort of like, for me, as my my ethnicity or non-Finnish characteristic is all sort of, in a sense, like text-based and centered around my name. And I feel like in many like certain fields of work, I find are harder. Like you never get responses from more traditionally masculine these fields of work, like construction and logistics and trucking and these type of things in the recruiting stage. And a lot of time I noticed when I'm actually in the workplace and working there, where the way that they perceive me flips around completely, then in a sense, I get to see a little bit of what motivates that sort of that racism, structural racism actually. I say mostly because you very rarely meet someone like, because they would talk to me about ethnic minorities in ways that they wouldn't if they would be cognizant of my name, which often they aren't. And so I think at the core, what I see is more than this, like you have this thought of whether it's stupidity or malice, but it seems like it's most laziness than anything. And really, like the way that it really is structural, the racism comes out in things where there often isn't like a single racist person behind this racism that's happening. Because, like for example, in service industries, someone might quite well think that, well, our customers might be racist, so we'd better not take a colored person behind the till, because that would be bad for the business, and I'm representing my business, which tries to make as much money as possible with as little effort as possible. And so this sort of this rigid logic and the machinery of how the choices of employees works and how they get promoted and how they get treated in the workplace is affected by, in addition to this subconscious bias, which sort of just shows like I have a good feeling about this work and I don't have a good feeling about this one. In addition, there's this sort of overarching structural logic that makes it often just profitable or good business to be racist in a sense.
Yeah, definitely. And also like it is what you said, that people in the companies, when we are working with them, we also often see that the companies, without asking, they just put the topic of like, you know, racism, ageism, or any kind of like diversity inclusion topic on the marginalized or minorities without asking them, do they really want to be a part of it, or do they really want to be in this initiative or not? Putting them, actually it's creating more non-equitable processes, because you have to then do more work and you have to be volunteering for free without you want it or not. So yeah, totally get that. What about you, Marjo? And then we can jump into the solutions part of actually this exists, we all know, but what can we do about it? But before that, maybe you can tell us a little bit how it has impacted in the workplace, or how it does impact in the workplace for people above 50 or 55.
Yeah, I think I have to say that I don't have my own experience, at least, which I would have kind of detected. Mm-hmm. But I think I have heard from some people in my age that there is a risk that there is no more so much investment in you. You know, if you are anyway that age, and perhaps we anyway get rid of you in the restructuring or something, why would we invest in your development, send you to expensive courses or something? So I think this is, again, unfortunately, I don't have evidence and facts, but this is the kind of what I think there happens between, you know, kind of behind the scenes, mm-hmm. which is of course very unfortunate. And I think like Yakup was also mentioning there, how people talk about also, you know, in your case perhaps about foreigners or something. Sometimes I also wonder how we talk about in any specific group. So when somebody is talking about people over 50 or 55 as seniors or aging people, I get mad. I'm like, everybody is aging. I mean, each of us, whether we are 5 or 12 or 20, we are aging. Everybody is getting older, no matter what we do. And I'm like, why are we put in this kind of baskets? When you hit certain number or when you hit certain other grouping, suddenly everybody is just treated as a mass. Somebody mentioned already that we are not treated as individuals. And that is exactly the issue. We are not treating others, we are not treated as individuals, we are treated as representative of some prejudiced stereotype group. And I think that is there underlying in many of the things that happened in the corporate life, especially, but also, of course, in smaller companies. And that's why I have to say that the current company where I'm in, I mean, we are people from 22 to my age, which I'm not going to reveal, but it's surely over 50. And we have the whole range of people in different ages, genders. We have people with total perfect Finnish, but having foreign names. We have foreigners. But that's because there has been a decision that it's about individuals and their competencies and diversity. That is good for the company. So it's a conscious decision, and it's basically coming through in everything what is done in that company. And I think now I'm jumping now into solutions already.
But that's really great. I just wanted to add that you already kind of gave the first pointer for the solution, is that acknowledging the fact that people are unique and they're individuals. And once you acknowledge the fact, it becomes much more easier to accept people as they are, and not because of the stereotypes or anything else they are associated with. So that's already the first starting point, but definitely let's dive into the solutions a little bit more. And yeah, Caroline, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Please finish your sentence, I'll go after.
No, I just wanted to say that let's dive into understanding how then we can help recruiters, companies, leaders to understand how they can reduce the discrimination, but also how they can make the companies more equitable, more inclusive, not just for particular groups, but actually for everyone. How can we be more inclusive? So, yeah.
Yes, thank you, Priyanka. And just want to echo a few things and discussions also from the chat. So first of all, there are a couple of international talents who have been joining us today, who are saying thank you to our Finnish panelists for sharing their stories, because they are used to, as international, facing the discrimination. And this is a bit eye-opening seminar now for them to see that also actually Finnish talents are facing challenges as well. So thank you for that. Indeed, I want to remind some of the statistics. So we have said 41% of people over 50 are reporting that they are feeling discriminated against in the recruitment processes. They are 43% of recruiters who are openly saying in an annual survey for these recruiters that they would not hire someone with disability. And then we have some other source of statistics where probably up to 60% of people in companies say that they don't think their company is ready to hire trans resources. So very important and critical topic indeed. We have talked about perhaps the fear also has been a word in the chat. So the fear of the unknown, so someone who is different. And I think this discussion now around the uniqueness of people and accepting people as they are is very important. So indeed, let's now move forward to the solution. How can we change?
Definitely,
So,
that was some really mind-boggling statistics. It's like like every time I see it, I know those statistics, but every time you hear it, it's like, what? But yeah, what do you think? Maybe let's talk, Anni, if you have anything to add in terms of the solutions, what companies or recruiters should know about or should change in order to make them more inclusive?
I think the education for different kind of benefits and possibilities, and helping aid from the government is like the best way. If the recruiters, employers would just take a look what you can get, what you can do if you hire a person with disability. And there is a lot of stuff going on, but employers don't use those things. Say they just, it's too hard. They don't want to use that extra thing to make the thing. Yeah, I think that's for like education for employers. That it is fine to hire a person with disabilities, and we have a lot of stuff for that. And more open mind attitude. I think it's the main thing is especially for towards people with disabilities, the attitude that we are individual, just ask, I think, and the attitude change in general.
Yeah, I think the points that you mentioned, that people don't want to make that extra effort. I think one of the things that companies should also understand, that we don't have unlimited resources. So we need to be utilizing all the resources that we have in the country, but also that different people bring in so many different perspectives, which we have been talking about with international talent, but also today's panel, like everyone brings in a new perspective, and that's so much important for bringing innovative ideas and development and processes in the organization. So I think that definitely would counter that. They definitely need this kind of education. So yeah, the acknowledging and then education, that's great. Anyone else would like to add how companies can start, or how recruiters can start getting out of this zone and becoming more inclusive?
I could.
Go ahead.
Yakup, we obviously have the same timing. I go now first, okay?
Same question.
So because, yeah, I think exactly what was already said, that it is really about getting exposure to different kind of people. I mean, if I'm thinking, for example, there are many companies who don't know how you deal with disabled person in the workplace. What does it require from us as a company? Do we need to do something special? So there are a lot of these kind of very educational part, but then there's also the mindset and attitude. I mean, overall, of course, we wish that every person in the world would be open for other people and not having the prejudice. But I think that we could also demand from companies, even as a social responsibility, to act like a good corporate citizen, which means that you have to try to reach out and understand more and see the kind of possibilities you have when you are open for diversity. So it's good for the company. They get better viewpoints and different viewpoints when there's diversity. But it's also about social responsibility, having the guts and kind of attitude to be open that not everybody fits into 30 years old male white profile, though it would be the easiest thing to hire, keep. So I think that but that's quite an effort. I mean, it's quite an effort. I mean, the companies are filled with people. I mean, there is not some company A, which you just go there and tell the company A that this is the way. There are hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of people, out of quite many are the decision makers. So it's quite an effort to, of course, reach out for them. And then I think that the top management plays there quite a big role. What is their attitude? how much they are expecting, how much they follow the diversity in the companies. Is it on their agenda or is it not on their agenda? What kind of words they use? So it comes from there.
Yeah, I think we did mention it in our last session also, and you just said like more bringing forth or visibility of the different kind of people, and having this, you know, having the contact with different people is so essential. And maybe the companies can take small steps and bring in speakers or like some you know, guest workshop or trainers from different marginalized communities, so that they can, the companies, the employees get a bit more acquainted, and the same thing that we are talking about here, like fear and the unknown, would get a little bit sorted out. But yeah, thank you for that point. Yakup, you were saying something.
No, I sort of the thing when talking about solutions for something as insidious as a discrimination in the workplace, it sort of it gets interesting because in a sense, a lot of the solutions, like there is no single solution, and there's so many different solutions that need to be implemented simultaneously. And of course, like in addition to sometimes being a lack of just like information, like understanding of how to encounter diversity, a lot of times mostly I think that it appears to this inertia and inability to change, like this basic laziness that wants to conserve energy. And I agree with this sort of idea that it should be made more profitable to participate in this multiplicity of different types of characters and faces and bodies that can be present in the workplace. It should be made sort of easier, and on the same time, it should be made less profitable to discriminate. But in addition to that, I also think that it would be sort of dishonest to not recognize the fact that a lot of the core structures that we have around our market system are based around this idea that you need to have this percentage of unemployed and disaffected people that can work for cheap, in a sense. And this sort of like, who fills this category, this role of the undesired, unwanted, the people that stand in line and fail to get these better jobs that they're searching for, so they can do poorer jobs. In a sense, this is a very core element in the workplace we have today present. And of course, that's a very sort of, it's a very deep-seated, essential part of the market. And simultaneously, while working within the market to make like details of job hiring and working on these, simultaneously, it's only fair to look at the larger structure at the same time. So we're not just tinkering with which group is more or less oppressed, or how can we like have more trainings so that people understand what racism is. The bigger pictures really shouldn't be left unattended.
Definitely, I think so. That's a very important point, that keeping the long-term vision in mind, that what are the structural issues that exist, and having a short-term plan to address it so that we can reach to that point. Because as you mentioned, it is true that there are a lot of solutions, and it's hard for companies sometimes to prioritize which one to go first. So I think that's it's a fair point, that you can have a certain kind of understanding that this is existing in the organization, and these are the pain points that we need to address now, and slowly move towards that. Because once again, it's a very, you can't change the culture and structural issues in a day or even in a year. So yeah, thank you. Susanna, you have raised your hand. Please go ahead.
Yeah, there's an interesting detail that, for example, trans women are overrepresented overrepresented in the ICT business, and in the same time, ICT companies have problems finding skilled people enough for their jobs. And that's an easy way to get a job if you have some knowledge of ICT business. And some companies have made the initiative that they want to make their workplace seem as a safe place for transgender people and LGBT people in general to work. And they have reached over to the different organizations, for example, ResQ and Transfeminiinit. And for example, in my previous job, I was the only person that they could find who was capable of doing the job. And I was surprised that I didn't have any competition at all. And even though I transitioned while doing the job, and still later after that, I've heard of other people who are still in the closet in the same company, that they are afraid of transitioning. And I don't know what other means there are to make the jobs seem more promising, but there are some problems that are difficult to remove. For example, other colleagues might talk about, they might spread some bad jokes at the coffee table or something like that, and that might make the job seem too hostile.
Yeah, I think having this kind of inclusive communication or psychological safety really important for people, especially people who are transitioning or who are still in the closet. They need some an environment where they can come out, where they know that their colleagues and their job won't be impacted. So definitely some of the companies that have done it really great. Maybe Caro, you want to say something? Are you raising your hand? Sorry. Okay. But do you have any like pointers in terms of like what has made these companies adapt and been able to make the workplace more open for transgender people? For example, sometimes I have seen that having employee resource groups or some kind of open discussion about the topic might help, but are they really like, do they really work, or what do you think is the best way to create this kind of psychological safety? Any ideas from anyone? Yes, go ahead, Anni.
I think company rules is one thing. Then when you start a job or when new people are coming or something, you just start with it. We don't take any bullshit. we want to do like this, and we don't tolerate negative speaking, and everyone is equal. And I think the whole open conversation about every topic in whole company is a really good start. And also something like that rules are the same in all the people, and like an open community. When you build a company and when you have a company, you try to group the people openly together. I think something like that. Yeah.
Yakup, you have raised your hand.
I'm active in Queer Ry in Vallila, and it's this sort of a very sex positive, queer positive work community, and it's sort of like at the core of it is the safest space policy, which should be something that every company it should be as a given. But I think the one thing that might make it stand out a bit is that that as it's a non-hierarchical structure for the community, and a part of that is that it's reinventing itself all the time. And at the very core of that is that sort of everybody that participates also in like sort of building the structure and works. And this applies to the safer space rules in the same way that the people who follow these guidelines also have authorship in these guidelines. So this sort of top-down structure where you have the CEO of a company that reads an article and sends his employees to train their employees or their subordinates, and this sort of like imposition from above of ethics might not be as effective as this sort of more listening, slower approach where you ask the workers themselves, like, what kind of conditions would make you feel safe? And of course, this has to be done with a structure that grants anonymity and doesn't make anyone, the process itself shouldn't make anyone feel less safe. But a process like this, where that sort of arises from the feelings of the workers themselves, it feels more of your own, and it feels like something that you want to commit to.
Definitely. Caro, you go ahead, and then to Susanna.
Yes. First of all, Yakup, if you don't mind, could you spell the name of the association? You've said it twice, and I have to say, at least I didn't get it.
It's Q-U-E-R-Q. Q-U-E-R-Q.
Quirk. Okay.
Begins and ends. Yes, that's
right. Right. And then, yes, perhaps the second point. So when we are dealing with the international talent topic, which is our core topic at IWWOF, we often say to companies in our messages that you are not alone. Use associations like us to educate yourself, and you can completely openly ask questions. They are no stupid questions. And I think it's the same today also, that one of the solutions would be for the HR or CEOs or recruiters of the company to be brave enough to also approach different associations depending on the kind of like applicants that they get, and openly ask the questions. But we are in a society and culture also where everybody who asks a question these days is labeled as rude and ignorant and not woke enough or whatever, that I also feel that people might be just scared to ask because they just don't know. And we need, I think, as associations to put the message out there to the companies that please come and see us and ask the questions. There will be no judgment. There is no stupid question. And like, don't be afraid in a way.
Go ahead, Susanna, you had something to say.
Yeah, I just remember that the law requires companies that have at least a certain amount of personnel, I'm not sure if it was 50 or 100, that they have a plan for equity and equality. And a little too often, for example, my previous employer, they only had the plan about men and women, but they could have had plans for about transgender and other LGBT minorities, that how well they're treated and how well their safety is provided and promised to be taken care of.
Totally. I think I have seen a lot of equality plans, and they are all about gender, like men and women, and that's about it. To me, it looks more like a checkbox because it's mandated by the law, so people do it. But definitely what Caro said and what you all said, really, that's what we have been also doing with the companies, that asking the people themselves what they feel, how they feel, what they think should be done, and then taking this bottom-up and top-down approach together to build a common language around the topic, because a lot of people, they don't understand, why do we need this? Why are we talking about this? So having this understanding is really important. So what Yakup, you said, that asking the people what safety means to them, and then what Anni, you mentioned, like having a common language, a code of conduct, or what kind of behavior is accepted in the organization, and then definitely asking the associations. And also one of the things that I have seen personally in my work, because we raise awareness about diversity inclusion topics, but most of the companies, they acknowledge, but they don't want to invest in it. So that's, I think, one of the things which I would like to say, that if you want to change, you really need to invest in your people, in your culture, and in developing the structural issues, because otherwise it's just like a checkbox thing that we are doing. And I think we are past that stage at this point. But yeah, let's hear from Marjo, and then we can take some questions from our audience.
Yeah, actually, as a former HR and recruiting manager in a corporation, I would actually say that I think this should become not only the are you looking for your own good as a company, because diversity is good for you and social responsibility is good for you, but I think that this is becoming an employer branding topic as well. I mean, the companies who are just having, who are just talking about these things but not doing anything, there is no evidence that they are really actually treating people in an equal way, I think they will not make it. There is scarcity of skilled employees, and there is also the generations that actually are expecting the company they work for to be equal and social responsible. So the companies who are not understanding this will have issues in the future to get the employees, to keep the employees, to have them motivated. So I'm in that sense trying to be positive that this has to change for all now discriminated groups.
Definitely.
For the companies to get people, good people,
yeah,
good people, regardless of the age or their orientation or their disabilities or their name or whatever reasons. So
great. We're going to have to start wrapping up. There is one final question that actually could be an other incentives for company to look into this. Are there any kind of special support from the government, Anni, when it comes to recruiting employees with disabilities?
Some kind of that you can get, like if you have to make changes, like build something to your company, like oh my, I lost all the words today.
Accessibility.
Sorry. Yeah.
Accessibility.
If you have to make accessibility changes, you can get money from the government to do that. So you don't have to pay those all of your own. And then also you can get part of the salary paid for the municipality. I think not the government. Municipality, I think, pays that for. But it depends the work and the job you are hiring the person and the length of that. So if you are giving a full-time job to a person with disabilities, probably you won't get anything because you are hired with skills, not the disability. Yeah. But there is a different kind of ways to hire a person with disabilities. But the accessibility, you can get the help, and you also get help for recruitment and stuff like that.
Okay, great. So that's also good to know. We have actually a pretty good set, I think, of solutions and a good call for action for companies that we will share then when we post the recording of this event around next Tuesday or next Wednesday. I want to thank our panelists. I want to thank our audience for all the great chat exchange. And of course, a special thank to Iida, who has been keeping up with the sign language interpretation for an hour, and that's quite an exercise. So thank you for that. Priyanka, perhaps the floor is yours to close.
Yes, thank you everyone for joining. And as always, we have like a 10-15 minutes off-stage discussion after this, but we will stop the recording and the interpretation. So if you want to stay and ask questions afterwards, please do so. But from my side, thank you, Anni, Yakup, Susanna, and Marjo. Special thanks to Iida and Caro.
And thank
See
you,
you in the next session. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.